are Mize, pediatric speech-language pathologist, and welcome to Teach Me to Talk's podcast. We are at the last course in my series, Building Verbal Imitation Skills in Late Talkers. And if you have been with me through this whole process, thank you so much for getting to the end of this series of courses. In today's show, we're going to be talking about how to teach a child to imitate phrases. So if you have jumped ahead, I would strongly encourage you to go back and listen to these shows, because we can't take a late talker and move them straight to phrases. There are other easier, earlier levels of imitation that we need to teach them first. So that's kind of my first precaution to you. If this is the first time you're jumping in, you may want to go back and fill in some of those other things. Secondly, like the other courses in this series, you can get the handout to follow along just by purchasing CE credit. You'll get the information about that here on YouTube in the post below. There's a link. If you're listening on your podcast app, this is show number 429. So you can go to my website, Teach Me to Talk, find show 429, and purchase your CE credit and get your handout there so that you can follow along. So if you've been with me throughout this whole series, we're talking about how to move a child all the way through this hierarchy of imitation. And when we have late talking children, we know that they're having difficulty with this with learning how to imitate, because they're probably stuck at one of these easier, earlier levels. And so we have to recognize where a child is, meet him there, and then move him through this process. And this is all connected to the steps that it takes for a child to really learn a new word. And I've reviewed this throughout the series, but I want to say it again here on this last show in the series. First of all, kids have to be connected to you. So they have to have that interaction and that engagement with you. If kids are running away, if you have to really kind of, as we say in the South, hog tie them to get them to sit and listen to you, belt them in a high chair, force them to stay with you, they're not as connected to you as they need to be. So you're going to have to go back and work on that piece. That second piece is joint attention, meaning that you try to show them something or you try to teach them something, and they are there with you. They don't, again, try to run away. Their attention is focused on what you are focused on. They are not doing their own thing. They have great joint attention with you. You're both connected and you're both paying attention to and talking about the same thing. That next little step would be receptive language and cognition. The child understands you when you're trying to teach him something new. He knows the words you're using. He links meaning with whatever object you're trying to show him, and the label or the word that you're saying there for that. He gets it. He puts it together. He starts to associate. You know, when mommy says fork, she's talking about the silver thing with prongs that I use every time I'm eating. And so they make those associations, so that cognitive receptive language piece. The next piece, that fourth step in this, is what we've spent this whole series talking about, and it's imitation. A child can say the word that you were trying to teach him. And then the last step would be that he uses that word, or expressive language. He's saying it. He's saying it, and he's saying it communicatively. He knows what it means, and he wants you to know so that you can do something for him. He's either requesting something from you, or he's asking for assistance, or even he's just giving his opinion or commenting, which are one of the included in one of the pragmatic functions that children before they turn 36 months learn how to do, to use words. And so those 5 steps, sometimes we'll see that a kid is stuck at one of those things, he's missing one of those skills. And so until a child comes together like that, he's not really going to be using short phrases like we're going to talk about here in this course. So let's start out this course like we've started out the other previous 7 courses in this series by me telling you the 3 most important points that I want you to know about a child or a late talking toddler or preschooler when they are learning to imitate phrases. As noted in the previous levels of imitation, you know, we've walked through all of these levels of imitation, Imitation always precedes spontaneous use. So what does that mean? That means a kid is going to copy what you say and repeat what you say long before he's able to generate that on his own. So for lots of kids, they need this step of learning how to imitate phrases. It's not just that they're learning how to imitate single words. We've got to bump it up and help them learn how to do this with longer utterances. And phrases, again, are a really critical step in helping a child become conversational. Now, we can have conversations with babies and toddlers when they're still at that single word level, just back and forth. But a kid really sounds like he's talking when he learns to imitate and then use these 2 and 3 word phrases. So that's where we are in this process. Now, the second thing I want to teach you about imitating phrases is when it happens in typical development, because you will be able to use this information to guide you in your decision-making process as you work with a late talker. So when do phrases emerge in typical development? Generally, when a child has achieved a spontaneous vocabulary, meaning not words he copies or imitates, but when he uses 35 to 50 words on his own, then you'll notice that he not only begins to copy or imitate phrases that he hears you say, he's going to start to make his own phrases. So he'll take words and pair them from his own little word bank. If you want to think about it like that, he'll start to pull words and put them together on his own. And again, that's when we really think, yes, she's talking. She's finally talking. And so that's why it's so important. But this doesn't happen automatically with new talkers. They don't go straight from goo goo gaga to spitting out phrase length utterances. There's some things that they have to do in between there. And one of those things is acquire enough words so they know what they mean, and then be able to put those words together on their own, as they are also learning how to imitate the 2 and 3 word phrases that you say at the same time. So it's kind of different processes there, but both are important in learning how to imitate phrases. And the third point that we want to talk about with phrases is this is where lots of late talkers get stuck. And as an SLP, you may have worked with children who had hundreds of words as single words, but they still can't get them connected, and you don't hear them imitate a lot of phrases, or if you do, those phrases seem to have been learned as one whole word, or one holistic phrase, one holistic kind of word there. And so instead of using the individual words there, the kid can't use those words that he says in the phrase without the other words there. So that's a holistic phrase. And again, lots of kids learn like that. That's kind of a Gestalt way of learning. Kids with autism will do that. They're kind of chunk learners. They learn in chunks instead of that individual word length. And so we're going to talk about that and what we do to help kids who are kind of stuck in that process. And let me just say, holistic phrases aren't bad. It's actually one of the strategies that we'll use for kids who are having difficulty moving to phrases, but just kind of know that there's a difference. And we'll talk about that as we move. Move through this course. That'll make more sense to you as we go. So let's take those 3 points that I just talked about and really break those down so that you'll be able to implement these strategies and use that information in your work with late talkers. Not only if you're a therapist, now I'm a speech language pathologist or a speech therapist, and so lots of speech therapists watch my shows and my podcasts, but other professionals do too that don't have quite the same background with early language development. So if you are an OT or a PT or a developmental specialist in your state early intervention program, or maybe you're a preschool teacher who works in special ed in your school district, let me teach you this information about phrases, because sometimes you may have put the cart before the horse. You're not really doing what needs to come first in order for a child to learn how to use phrases. So let's think about this process as a really sequential, logical process, this paradigm that we're going to move through with kids. And if you've skipped ahead to this, if you're watching this because you have a kid that doesn't know very many words and you think, how can I get him to phrases? Don't do that, because it's going to be so frustrating for that kid and for you, because again, there are these easier, earlier levels that a kid has to master first. So let's just take a look at the graphic that we've been using throughout this whole podcast series and walk through how a kid learns how to imitate. Now, if you have purchased my therapy manual, Building Verbal Imitation Skills in Toddlers, you can take that and flip to the back page here, the chart here where we walk through these levels of imitation. Now, if you don't have that, I'm going to put the graphic here on the screen, but it's going to look a little different for you. But again, we start with imitating, not at the word level for late talkers, but we teach them how to imitate out here with actions, with objects. So they learn how to do what we do with a toy. And I spent a lot of time talking about that way back in show number 423. And then we move kids up. Once they can do that, we teach them how to imitate things where we don't have another object of focus there. It's just their body, their own little body movement. So we teach them how to imitate gestures that eventually become communicative or communicative. So we teach them how to lift their arms up to be picked up from the crib. We teach them how to clap. We teach them how to point. We teach them how to wave bye-bye. And so those kinds of skills. And then we move that imitation up to their face and their mouth. And there's a subset of late talkers that are going to need you to spend some time there doing some nonverbal things with your mouth. And then and only then will you be able to move to sounds. But fortunately, most of our late talkers then, once they've learned how to imitate a lot of body movements and can copy that from you and then use those little gestures symbolically to communicate a message, then they're ready to add sound. So for those kids, we still don't start at words. We start at play sounds, so little sound effects in play, and then we move them through to exclamatory words. So these are those little words that they learn, like wow and yay or woohoo, or any of those little words, even a little seemingly a two-word utterance that really is a holistic phrase like oh man or oh no. They learn how to use those exclamatory words, and then they learn how to imitate words that they've learned in verbal routines that become automatic. So then words like go in Ready, Set, Go, or a fall down in a little routine like Ring Around the Rosies, they might start to say it there. So that, and then and only then would a kid really be able to imitate familiar words as single words. And so that's what we just did in the previous show. And now we're ready to bump them up to where a late talker is to the point that they can begin to imitate some phrases. And again, why do we want them to imitate phrases? It's so that they can use those phrases. But there's a problem with late talkers. We know that there's a problem with their little systems and in bumping up to using language in this way. And many times kids will have lots of single words and still not be able to combine those and use those in phrases. So when this happens, well, let's just take a look. Let's take a look at some of the reasons that a child might have difficulty bumping up to phrases. And again, this is really specific to late talkers. Generally, children who are typically developing move through this process pretty quickly. They learn how to use words, and it just happens. When they start to get about 50 words, you'll notice they start to make their own little phrases. And even before then, they're imitating the phrases that you say. So let's look at what might be going on when this is not happening. So these are the problems or the reasons that a late talker can't move up to phrases. The first one is what we've already talked about. It would just be a language delay. And when we're looking at phrases, this would mean that a child does not have enough words in his single word vocabulary to be able to pull those words out and put them together like we were just talking about. And this happens a lot in language delay. We'll get a 2-year-old on our caseloads in early intervention, and we'll get them moving along to that single word level. And then let's say they've learned 10 or so words. What does mom want then? A kid can say bye-bye and a kid can say da-da, and what does she start working on? She starts working on him saying bye-bye, da-da, and they're not getting anywhere. He only says one word of that phrase that she's modeled. The problem is he's still got that language delay, and it's still affecting him, and he does not not have enough single words. So what do we do in that case? We've got to bump him up. We've got to teach him more words. Usually there's not enough variety with his words. So all the words that he knows, that he would know may be nouns or names of things. So we've got to give him some new words to be able to combine and make little phrases that make sense. Now, this typically happens with kids when they're not late talkers. This generally happens around 18 months. They've, again, learned how to talk on time at 12 or 15 months. They started saying their own little single words, and then by the time they turn about 18 months, they start to combine those phrases on their own. Now, as an early interventionist, you may say, oh, I thought phrases came in at 24 months. That's the outside limit of typical development. So when you have a 2-year-old that's not doing phrases, and doesn't have that 50-word single word vocabulary, there's a language delay going on right there. So what's our solution when we have a language delay? We teach more words. We expand their vocabulary. And I talked a little bit about this back in the previous show 428, where we talked about helping a child learn how to imitate new words. And we talked about the importance of adding other word classes. So verbs, prepositions, pronouns, descriptive words like adjectives and adverbs. Go back and listen to that show and watch that show and get some ideas for helping a child expand his vocabulary. All right, so the next problem that we encounter when a child is a late talker and not using phrases yet, it could have been the language delay. Let's talk now about the language disorder. What's a language disorder? Well, let's start out by talking about what a delay is. A delay means that a child is acquiring all the language milestones that we would want him to acquire in the order that we typically see in a child without language problems or issues learning how to talk. And he acquires those. The problem is just with timing. It's just late. It's just slow. But everything is coming in as we expect in the right order. There's nothing, we don't see any kind of atypical thing emerging that we think, wow, why is he doing this? It's mostly that skills are missing. And he, again, over time catches up. That was a language delay. What's a language disorder? It's a little different in that not only do we have the delay present in that things aren't coming in exactly when we would expect to see them, so there's a problem with timing, but there are also some atypical things that we would not expect to see. Maybe they have some skills, some splinter skills way up here. Maybe you have a kid who's a late talker who's not using very many words, and he's certainly not using any phrases on his own, but he can quote lines from a movie. So he's echolalic. He's not really using those words. You might hear a word in his little monologue that he's doing that he can't say or use as a single word. And so that's atypical. So that really is a language disorder. Kids with autism who will go on to be diagnosed with autism have lots of those splinter skills. They may be able to count or sing the alphabet song, or as I said before, they're echolalic. They use a lot of quoting books or movies or maybe even conversations. Maybe they quote you like that. But they can't use those words as single words, and most of the time they don't understand what they're saying. There's a receptive language gap there, and so that's a language disorder. It's not just a problem that it's slow, it's that there are things coming in that we don't expect to see. And so lots of our little friends with autism also struggle again with processing language. It's that they understand, this is a ball, this is a baby, this is a shoe, but when you put it all together, give the baby a ball and then put the shoes on her feet, they can't get it because it's just too much language there. And so many times our little friends with autism have auditory processing differences. It's just too much for them to synthesize and make sense. And so that's a problem, with the language disorder. A lot of times our little guys who are on the spectrum also have difficulty with pragmatics or how they use their language. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but let me first talk about jargon. What is jargon? Jargon is when a child speaks in long strings of unintelligible utterances. So they're talking, they're making noise, but you have no idea what they're saying. And jargon is something that lots of kids who will go on to be diagnosed with language disorders, particularly after the age of 2. They continue to use a lot of jargon. Now, jargon is a part of typical language development, but it happens earlier than 2. It happens usually when kids are making that leap from single words to phrases, and they've heard their parents and their older siblings, or at daycare, they've heard other kids talk in these long strings of sound, and they know they need to do that too, but they just don't have the vocabulary. And most of the time, it's not the expressive vocabulary piece that's disordered, it's receptively. They still haven't really learned to associate what single words mean with that single word label, and so they're still struggling with that. So anytime we see a lot of excessive jargon past 2 without the child also using lots of single words, we know that's a language disorder. Usually, again, a receptive language disorder. And sometimes we think about that as an expressive disorder. But talking is not the problem. The problem is that receptive piece, or that comprehension piece. All right, so I mentioned a minute ago pragmatics, or language use. And this is another area where sometimes we as speech language pathologists, SLPs, and other early therapists miss this with kids, because a kid may know a lot of words. We might even have kids with high functioning autism as toddlers who know hundreds of words, but they're only using those words in the context of labeling or naming. They can't even use a word that let's say that they might label, they might see apple, and they, as a single word, they can label it, in their speech app or in a picture in a book. But if they see an apple on the counter in their kitchen, they still can't ask for it. They can't come up with that word. And when you try to make them ask for it or set up a situation like that, they fall apart on you. They get too mad, because even though they know that's an apple, they still can't use the word apple to request. And so we have to think about these pragmatic functions. And this is what we need to, as therapists, spend a lot of our time talking about to parents. It's not just that he knows the word and can say the word or imitate it. We want him to use it. So I want you to pay attention to these pragmatic functions, these earlier ones that we use. And this information is from my book, The Autism Workbook. And even though we're really talking about late talking per se, so many kids with autism struggle with this that I wanted to mention this to you, to use this as a resource. And so let me just run through these typical pragmatic functions that we have to teach a kid, not only how to label the word or how to identify it, but how to use it. So we could use words to seek attention or call others. So this would be, saying mama to get her to come to my crib or come over and help me do something, to come over to me, to pay me some attention here. So that attention seeking or calling others. We've already talked about how requesting objects. We can also talk about requesting assistance. So again, using a word like help, or using maybe even the same word like mama that we used to call for her attention. But now we use it differently. We need to ask for her help. Let's say that our ball, our toy has rolled under the couch and we can't get it. And instead of falling apart, we need a kid to know he can call mom and show her and get her to do that for him. Another pragmatic function would be requesting information. So saying something to somebody, asking, what's that, or where'd it go? And we do that initially with our tone of voice. So even a pragmatic kind of intonation here, a questioning intonation, where a kid is like saying dada, and that's not to say, like to label dada. When a kid would label dada or see dada, they might say dada. But let's say they hear a noise, they hear the car door, and they might, at the end of the day, and they know, hey, this is when dad comes home. So a kid might look at his mom and say dada, like a question like, is that dad's car? Is daddy home? So that sort of thing. It could be another pragmatic function is rejecting or protesting or complaining, and kids have to do this non-verbally first. When you get the big hand, when they stiff you with their elbow, like, I don't want that, get it away from me. Kids are going to learn how to do that before they learn how to say a word like no, or I don't want it, or yuck, or even anything like that. And so that's another pragmatic function. Responding and acknowledging, so that a kid will answer you, or at least say, huh? When you've asked him a question, how do they respond even before they can give you a long response there with words? A kid who would use a word to inform or to draw attention to something. A kid who says, hey, or look, when he wants you to notice something. A kid who would just make a comment on an action or an object. Kids who answer and then use words to answer, and again, they might do it non-verbally first with just a look before they're going to be able to use that. So let me run through these other pragmatic functions, and then I'll say one more thing about that. We want kids to use social routines and words like greeting and closing. So when they say hello or hi or bye. Other kinds of social words like sorry when they've done something to hurt someone, or words like thank you when they've received something from someone. Words to give their opinions, and even as toddlers, the kid might give an opinion. He might say yucky or ooh with a food that he doesn't like. He might do a little stinky sign when he's pooped his diaper, or even in the middle of potty training there, to just give his opinion. Kids who could express feelings with words, so like physical states like hungry, or emotional states like sad. Kids also do things like relating information. So they tell you about what's happened when you weren't there. You come into a room, something is broken, there are two siblings there, and you say, who did it? What happened? And we want kids, that's a pragmatic function, to be able to use his brother's name to say, like, who did it, to tell on somebody. Kids also use stories in a more, we kind of think about this as older for toddlers and preschoolers, but kids start to tell stories. So they start to make things up, their own little play scenarios. They start to narrate their play, or they start to boss you around and instruct other people with their words. So those are the pragmatic functions that we want to see before 36 months. And why am I telling you this when we're talking about phrases? It's to talk about language disorders. So normally in typical language development, when kids are learning how to say words, they just seamlessly also learn how to use words. So we're not having to teach kids with typical language development skills how to use their words to inform, or how to use their words to respond, or how to use their words to call others. They just get that. That's just wired into them. But part of language disorder would be teaching those pragmatic functions. So if you were, as a speech therapist, and you were working on these kinds of things with kids, if you notice he can only label, he can only respond, he can't really initiate, he doesn't do any, whatever any of those other functions were, that's a language disorder. And that's my whole purpose of this last 10-minute explanation, is just to get you to really differentiate between disorders and delays. Delays are going to be easier to treat because, again, there's nothing atypical going on. It's just a problem with time. Disorders, you're going to have to pick apart. You're going to have to analyze and really figure out, how do I teach this kid pragmatic functions? And let me say this. It's going to be easier to teach those pragmatic functions with single words than it is with phrases for the most part. Now, that's not to say that you can't teach pragmatic functions with phrases. You certainly can. You're just going to make it harder when you add more words. And my only point with this whole thing is, if you're having to teach pragmatics, that child has a language disorder, and it's going to be a little more complicated to get kind of to this phrase level, because there are other things that you have to teach too. All right, other problems with acquiring phrases. It might be beyond that language delay or language disorder. It could be an environmental issue. What do I mean by that? I mean that the child hasn't heard enough short phrases to be able to add phrases on his own. So usually there's a lack of systematic teaching. So parents do one of two things. They're either up here talking like a grown-up all day long, only adult models. The kid doesn't ever hear anything except paragraph-length speech. For those parents, as therapists, you've already figured that out probably, and so you've already taught them to bring it way down and simplify and keep words at that single word level. Now, for some kids, again, even though they have that magical 50-word benchmark with their vocabularies, they still aren't able to do short phrases without a lot of direct teaching. So for those kids, this is an environmental problem. And so you're going to have to help parents use strategies that really facilitate combining of words to phrases. So for those parents, you are going to teach them expansion. Now, this is one of the easiest problems to fix, and sometimes therapists act like it's the hardest, but really it's just teaching a parent how to take a single word that a kid says or a single word that they say and expand it to that phrase level. Not the sentence level, not the paragraph level, which lots of us chatty adults have trouble with, but just that phrase level. So if a kid says car, we're going to add a word to it, and so and make it make sense. So if he has the car and he wants the car, we'll model want car, or I want car, or car please, something for a request. If he says car when he's pushing the car on the floor in play, we would say go car, or car go. Again, we take the word that he said, we look at the context, and we put another related word with it. And so that's the technique of expansion. That's what we do when this has been an environmental problem. The kid just hasn't heard enough short phrases. He's got enough single words, but we need to take words from his own vocabulary, combine them, and usually that's with expansion is where we get the fastest progress with that. All right, the fourth problem with acquiring phrases could be that there are underlying cognitive issues that make it very difficult for that child to combine anything. And this is how we know that a kid isn't doing phrases because there are underlying cognitive problems is by looking at his play. And so this would be a kid who would be, it's really, really rare that he begins to combine ideas in play or sequence actions in play. And I've seen this happen enough to know that when I can pin it down to this problem and I can convince his parents that this is the problem, when we help a kid here and when we meet him here and he has enough single word vocabulary, the phrases just start to come. And it's been a cognitive problem. It's really a nonverbal problem. And so we address it from that perspective. So we help a kid start to join ideas and sequence ideas in play so that he can begin to sequence his words. So how you spot this problem would be a kid who only plays with one thing at a time, and when you try to join something or add something to his play, he wants nothing to do with it. So even if you put an animal in the back of his little pickup truck that he's playing with, after a while he throws that animal out. You try to put a driver in his little Fisher-Price school bus that he's playing with and people, and you are so cute. You even try to sing Wheels on the Bus, and you do the verses about the mama and the baby and the daddy and all that, and after a while, after the song's over, he takes those people out and he's just done with that. You know that that's a child who's really not able to combine. This would be a little girl who's over playing with her baby dolls, and she only has the baby doll. You put clothes on that doll, and she is ripping the clothes off. You try to put the bottle in the baby doll's mouth, she puts the bottle in her mouth instead. And so you know this is a kid who's just functioning at that single idea level, and we can't get them there with language yet because language is harder, and so we have to teach it non-verbally. So our solution, again, is to combine objects in play and objects in daily routines. We have a child use an object on himself, on us, and then on a baby doll or a character. And we walk through that process over and over and over and over and over until they learn how to join ideas. Now, it's not always with a character. I've done a lot of talking about baby dolls and stuff. It might just be that the kid learns that he hooks the trailer to the tractor, or if he is a train nut and loves to play with Thomas the train, you actually get him to hook Thomas and James, and then you have him drive Thomas and James around the tracks to go into the little station. So you have him sequence these ideas. That's what we do. Now we remember anytime a child has those cognitive delays that we're seeing in play, they're going to show up in language. They show up as receptive language delays and expressive language delays. And so we remember that and we address it. We stop working on phrases and we go back and work on play. And we pick this up with receptive language. Then we're able to move forward. All right, the last problem that we're going to talk about with acquiring phrases here would be kids who, I've already mentioned this, they can't sequence two words together because they have motor planning problems, and that is known as Apraxia or childhood apraxia of speech. They've got the ideas here, they just can't coordinate it all and sequence those sounds to put those sounds together for words, or here we're talking about phrases, so words together for phrases. They just have a harder time getting those two-word phrases together. Could be because again, that's a neurological difference. They just can't get it there. And I spend a lot of time talking about apraxia in Teach Me to Imitate New Words, which was podcast number 428. Go back and watch that show for some more ideas or for that explanation about that. But those kinds of kids have a hard time joining words for phrases because the sequencing is just too hard. Another closely related problem here would be a muscle tone difference with just their muscle tone. So they've got lower muscle tone, meaning not weaker, but just their muscle tone is droopier, for lack of a better word. Flatter, flaccid is the professional term there. So you're going to see an open mouth posture with these kids. It's harder for them to acquire their gross motor milestones. Their little bodies, just their muscle tone. It's just not in that normalized range. So harder for them to learn how to turn over, harder to sit up, harder to cruise and to walk and to run. So those kinds of kids, that muscle tone issue isn't just isolated usually to their legs or their hands or their arms. It's their whole body. So it's their core. They can't get the breath support that they need for speech to be able to produce a longer utterance. So that's going to be a problem. Their articulators, their tongues and their lips and their cheeks, all the structures of their mouths, those don't move in a coordinated fashion enough for them to be able to get that phrase out. So there are other physiological problems that could happen too. So again, look at those things, consider, why is this kid not using phrases? And if it's one of those other things, if there's a muscle tone problem, you're going to have to address it. And maybe you need a physical therapist or an occupational therapist to help a parent and to provide some strategies to get kids' little bodies to the point where they can produce phrases. So again, it could be any number of those things that we talk about. So let's move on now with, we've identified the reason that a kid may struggle with phrases, and I've given you some preliminary strategies. But now let's talk about the kind of the down and dirty strategies. What do we really do? So I've already talked about my very first strategy that I teach parents, and it's just expansion. And so I try to do this before we even start on phrases. So when a kid is using a lot of single words, I say, now, I know you're going to want him to start to put two of these words together, and this might be hard for him just because it was harder for him to learn words. So I know now this might be a struggle too. So what I want you to start to do is expansion. So every time he says a word at home, I want you to, do what I just talked to you about. Pick another word that makes sense related to what he's doing, say that word, and then try to get him to imitate that phrase. So that's our number one thing, is use expansion there. And the next thing that we want to do once parents are doing that, and you'll have to model this in sessions for parents. You'll have to say, so this is what I do. I'll say, so let's use expansion, and that's all we're going to focus on today. So no matter what we're playing today, anytime he says a single word, your job is to take that word and to say something else with it, put another word with it, model it, so that then he can imitate it. And you try to get a mom to do that with you in sessions, and then you can see if she's not going to be able to do that, or you can see if she gets stuck, like we'll talk about in a minute, if they just get stuck on one pattern. Sometimes when we go to phrases, what do parents do? They just think, well, I'm just going to put a color word with it, and that's all I'm going to do. They kind of limit their child automatically, and a parent might even think, well, he doesn't know colors yet, so this is a great way for me to teach him colors. Not so fast. We really can't teach any new word in the context of a phrase. We have to pull that back out in the context of a single word, so that late talking toddler, we know that he's really linking that meaning and really understanding that. So that's something that we want to be sure that we're talking about with parents too. But back to my point about modeling, if a mom can't do that in a session with you, she's going to need more practice with that. So then what you're going to have to say is, hey, let me show you how to do it. So in this session, we're just going to focus on, with me, I'm going to use expansion every time. And so if you miss a single word, or if I miss a single word that he says and we don't expand, I hope we can catch each other in this. And so you do a lot of modeling for mom, so that when a kid says in your session, bubble, if he wants bubbles, you'll say, okay, say bubble please, bubbles please, bubbles please. And you're modeling that, and you're saying to mom, did you see how I did that? That's expansion. And then let's say the kid pops the bubbles and he says bubble, and you say, yes, pop bubble, pop bubble, you popped bubble. You say that, pop bubble, pop bubble. And again, you do the things that we talked about in the previous show. You change your intonation, you change your volume, you do anything you can to get that kid to imitate that 2-word phrase. And so you're modeling that expansion. That's your number one strategy there with phrases. Your second thing that you want to do is model phrases with the easiest targets, the easiest second word that a kid, might be able to say, those easiest patterns first. So I have pulled together my list of easiest patterns, and I've shared that here with you on your handout. And so take a look at that now. Usually the first pattern that I can get with a toddler is pairing the word my with something that they want, with the favorite object. I'll show you a therapy clip about this in a minute and how well this works. But why does this work? Because my is usually a pretty easy word for a kid to say. It's just a consonant vowel there. And more importantly, they are so tuned in to what my means. So they are just semantically, they're on it. Because as we talked about before, toddlers are possessive. They are learning that they can control their worlds. They are learning they are separate people and have different ideas than their mom or their other caregivers here. And so using the word my is so powerful when we're trying to get a phrase there. Let's work through some of these easier patterns, and then we'll watch a little therapy clip about that. But another easy pattern would be more plus a noun that a child says. And I still like the word and the sign for more, although a lot of therapists don't. But back in the show, I guess it would be show 423, when we were talking about teaching signs, and I talked about how I still teach the sign for more first, but lots of therapists don't like it because of the research that was specifically tied to autism, not late talking, but autism, that kids would cling to that sign or cling to that word and use it for everything rather than being real specific. So sometimes some therapists then would say, well, just don't use the word more. Just forget about that word. I like it because, again, it serves such a good purpose, and especially here at phrases, because we can take the word more and then we can take an object that they like or an action that they like up, which again, that's a preposition, but kids might use that to, it would be, I've forgotten the term for that, but where they use a preposition as a verb, and I think it's locative. I think that's the word. Forgive me if I have misremembered that, but we're going to use that where they might say more up, where they want you to throw them up again. And is that a phrase that you would model for them? Probably not, but that's a phrase that they put together on their own, so they self-generated that. So even anything like that, if it's if there's something more, that's why the word more would be useful. But you can use more like that. You can use more please. You can take a noun and put please at the end of that. So that's another great early pattern there. So it might be milk please that they are asking you for, or drink please. I like using greetings, or closing words like hi or bye-bye, and putting that with a name or a noun that a kid says frequently. And so think about, with a name, that's kind of obvious, hi mama or bye bye mama. But what about something like when you want the child to come in from outside, you want him to not be on the slide anymore. How about saying bye bye slide? That's a way that we discontinue events a lot. So that's another early pattern. And even the word night night, and I think about the book Good Night Moon. I just love that little book. But we can pair night night again with a name or a noun. So those are the easiest patterns first. So now I want you to see a therapy clip of this strategy in action. And this little girl is just precious. She's a little girl that I worked with for just a short time, but her history was pretty interesting at this point. She was in foster care, and actually the family that lived next door to me were foster parents, and so I got to see her and got to know her and them through this experience. And she was a little girl that was so neglected in her first almost 2 years of life that she didn't even voice anymore. When they first met her, they didn't even really realize that she was in distress until they would look over at this sweet little girl and realize that she was crying, because she didn't even cry with a voice. But thankfully, this loving family got in their home, started to go to daycare too, where there's a lot more structure. And so she made light speed progress, because she was just a little girl again that had some little quirks and some little issues, so she couldn't thrive in the environment that she was living in. But once we got her in a better setting, she just did great. So this is us, where we've progressed to the point of getting her to imitate phrases. This was the very first time that we had worked on this. And so take a look at how I pair the word my with little puzzle pieces that we're using for this therapy activity.
In there. Oh, there's kitty cat. And cat. And kitty cat. More bird.
Bird.
Uh-oh.
Man.
My bird.
Man.
Oh, you say my bird.
A bird.
Good. That was so good.
Look.
Uh-oh. My dog.
A dog.
Okay. My cat.
A cat.
My cat.
A
Okay.
cat.
You have all those animals. My puzzle.
A poster.
Oh, you said it. In there.
Didn't that work great? So sometimes just picking your target word for phrases is just as important as it was when we were back with single words. We want to do everything we can to make this easy for a child. So to do that, you don't need to teach new words here at the phrase level. I really want you to think about pairing existing words from a child's established vocabulary for these first phrase attempts that you get. And this makes a lot of sense, because why? You know a kid can already say these words. So then and you know that a kid probably more than not knows what these words mean. So you pull these words from words that they already can say. The second thing that I want you to do is to think about modeling these words. So what is modeling? We've talked about this over and over. It's just you say what you want the kid to imitate. And remember the guidelines that we used for modeling back in the previous course, 428, when we were talking about teaching a child to imitate new words. We said that we were going to model how many times? Not one time, not two times. What did evidence-based practice teach us from Dr. Caroline Bowen's work? It's that we modeled the target phrase 12 to 18 times in a single activity, and I'm going to go ahead and say it before we expect the kid to say it. So if you are just starting with phrases, you can't just model it a few times and then really start to over cue that. You've got to model it a lot. And that's why expansion works so well, where we said we were going to just spend some time teaching parents how to take a word a kid says, put another word with it, and then model it. That's why all this modeling really makes a difference, because they've got to hear it over and over and over again. So think about that modeling that phrase many times. For some kids that we have worked through this entire process, we already have a lot of little phrases that we can go ahead and pick from, and this would be from our verbal routines that we just used right before we started to target single words, and then from all their little social games. So if we played Ring Around the Rosies with them, the last words of that would be a great phrase for them to imitate. So, the last little line of that song, ashes, ashes, we all, what? Fall down. And so that would be a good thing to do. It might be that this child loves baby dolls, and you have played baby dolls. And so it might be that you have rocked these baby dolls, and it might be that you have pretended to put the babies to sleep, and you have said night night baby over and over and over. That's an established play routine for her. So that would be a great phrase for you to try to do. So Think about those things. All right, the next kind of phrase that would be wonderful would be holistic phrases. Now, what are holistic phrases? These are phrases that kids learn as one whole word. And I think I've already mentioned this back in the introduction for this course. And why would we do this? And again, you might be thinking, well, Laura, that's kind of contradictory to what you said, because you just said that some kids have to be able to join those ideas and really understand that cognitively before they're able to use that phrase functionally and before they're able to combine those words to make phrases. And I want to say yes, but for some kids, we have to get the length of the utterance or the phrase. And so they have those sequencing problems that we talked about with Apraxia. So for those kids, teaching them holistic phrases is a great way to get them there, with just being able to sequence enough syllables or enough words to kind of get there. So look at your handout. I've listed some holistic phrases there, like no way, oh man, oh no, oh boy, and then the 3-word things. I got it, I did it, I do it. Other 2 words right there or right here. See ya. Come on, what's that? Where'd it go? Where are you? Those kinds of little holistic phrases. For some kids, this works. You introduce a lot of these little phrases, and then that's when you'll see them start to combine phrases from their own vocabulary. All right, these holistic phrases really worked for little Kelly, the little girl that I just showed you in the previous therapy clip. So let's watch her again, and let's see how effective holistic phrases are for her.
Keep in. Almost. Where'd it go?
There.
Right there. I did it! I did it! Yay! My turn.
There.
Okay. Okay, your turn.
There.
Right there. Keep in.
There.
Keep
There.
in.
There.
Right there, right there. Keep in.
There. There.
One more, one more. One more. One more. I did it! Yay! Give me 5. All right! I did it! You're going to give Johnny 5? Yes! I did it! Say it, Kelly. I did it! Tell Johnny. Tell him. I did it! Did you say it? Uh-oh. My turn. My keys. Okay. Right there. Where'd you go? In hole. Right there. This one. This one. This one. Right there. Right there. This one. Turn around. More keys. Good. Keep in. Turn around. I did it. I did it. Yay. Uh-oh. My turn. Okay. More keys. More keys. Good. Right there. Keep in. I do it. Keep in. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, key. Uh-oh, fall down. More key. Good. More keys. Where's it go? In there. Uh-oh, stuck. He's stuck. Look, I got to fix. Tell Laura, fix it. Good. More keys. Uh-oh. More keys. Wait. More keys.
Now, one thing I haven't mentioned in this course, but I've said it previously, is really, really looking at how fun you sound and how fun you look. And the professional terminology for that is called heightened affect. So affect meaning your emotions. So did you notice in that last video clip when I did it, I got it. She's able to really do it when we add that little gesture with it, and when we are obviously more emotional than just saying, I did it, I got it. She needed that extra bump. So heightened affect is something that can really, really help you too when a child is struggling not only to imitate those exclamatory words like we talked about back in that show or single words. It really works here with phrases, and particularly holistic phrases, because those are usually fall more along the lines of exclamatory words like we talked about in that course. So be sure that you are paying attention to your heightened affect. And so if a kid is not imitating a lot of phrases with you, try those holistic phrases and try to model those again by ratcheting it up a notch and getting them to imitate that there with you too. All right, so let's start with, let's review some don'ts with some don't phrase targets that we could try. Remember, we've already talked about the words that aren't as functional or as productive for late talkers when we were talking about single words, and that's getting stuck in academic language. So getting stuck with modeling a color word. We've already said that sometimes parents fall into those patterns. And so you tell them you want them to do phrases and you think they're with you, but then the next week they come back and you talk about what kinds of phrases did he imitate this week, and mom might say, well, he didn't do very many. The only thing that he tried to say, was maybe a blue car. That's the only one I could get. And you think, oh, I missed it. I did not talk to her about not just using color words or not just using number words. 1 cat, 2 cats, 3 cats, if they try to do a little naming book like that. And so you've got to be real specific about that and talk about the different patterns that they can use. And let me just say too, for some kids, you're going to realize their single word vocabulary consists of nothing but nouns. And you think, well, no wonder he can't do it. I've got to teach him some other word classes first. So sometimes that happens with parents. They've got to teach about those. They've got to think about those other word classes and teach those other word classes before they can get there. All right, another don't here is don't start with carrier phrases. And I had an interesting conversation with a young therapist just last week about this, and she was talking about how she had moved a little girl to phrases, and she had tried I see, with whatever the toys they were playing with. I want, and she was saying the kid, she can't do it yet, and no wonder, because that really is a 3-word phrase, so that's a lot harder. It's got a pronoun in it, that word I, and lots of our little late talking friends have such difficulty acquiring later parts of speech like pronouns, so we have to make it easier. So don't get stuck in I want, I see, I whatever. Don't get stuck in those patterns. Those are older patterns. Stick with just those 2-word combinations from their existing single word phrases first. Again, we've already talked about a lot of these things. High frequency combinations are just so important because, again, these are the combinations that you're going to hear, that children will hear over and over and over again. So it makes it a lot more likely that they will say those same high frequency combinations over and over again. All right, so I want to show you a cute little clip of one of my favorite little clients that I ever worked with. This little guy, he was so happy. Once we got his strategies going, he just took off. And so this is us here doing some early phrase combinations with some high frequency patterns. So watch this. Oh, ready? Should we close?
Yeah.
Close. Oh, what do we say? What do we say? Froggy! Where are you? Good. Should we open?
Apple.
Good. Tell Laura, open please.
Please.
Good. Open.
Apple.
Open please. Open please. You do it. Here he goes. Here he goes. Oh, you're going to show Daddy. Can he hop? Hop, hop. That's funny. Yay. Froggy, put him in. Tell him in.
Yeah.
Good, in, Frog.
Yeah.
Good try. Oh, tell him bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Froggy.
Bye-bye.
Almost. Bye-bye, Froggy.
Bye.
Good.
Bye.
Bye, Froggy. Oh, you ready? You're going to call him? Henry. Froggy.
Bye.
Where are you?
Froggy? See?
See.
See, Froggy? More froggies. More froggies.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at more.
Oh,
I want more. Ooh, look. Did you see? There's a fish.
oh.
Oh, see? What's that?
More.
More froggies, more fish. Did you see it? Yeah, look, bee.
Bee.
A bee, bumblebee. Bzzz. That's funny. You want more? Wow. What's that? Froggy. He says, yay! Want to open? Good. Open, please. Where are you, Froggy? Oh, open. Yay, Froggy. Whoa, whoa. Can you make him go night-night? That's right. Pat him. Good. Pat, 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 pat. Oh, you got it. Whoa, Froggy. Oh, you're giving him kisses. That looks more like a wrestle than a kiss. Yeah. Are you all done, Frog? You want to tell him bye-bye?
Bye.
Bye, Froggy. Whoa, put him in. In.
Yeah.
Good. Bye, Frog.
Bye.
Bye, bye, Frog. Oh, are you all done, Froggy? Henry, you want to clean up? Okay, let's clean up.
Yeah.
Yay! Help me clean up.
Ina.
Clean up, clean up. Everybody, everywhere. Oh, you want to zip? Will you come zip the bag? Tell Laura. Zip.
Yeah.
Good. Zip. Yay! I did it!
Now, those first two kids were pretty easy. That little girl that I showed you, and we did Mize with the puzzles, and then the heightened affect with I did it, I got it. And then that sweet little boy that I just showed you with those high frequency combinations. Those kids were pretty easy. But on our caseloads, we don't always get the easy kids, do we? And as a parent of a late talker, you might be thinking, my kid cannot do that. This is a lot harder than this lady is trying to make it seem like it is. Let's look at when it's not so easy, and we'll discuss this next level of strategies. Let's look at this next little friend. And I think you've seen him in that previous course. I think he was in 428 with single words. And I think even then we were doing some phrases because that's primarily where this little guy struggled. And so here we're going to use his previous strategy of sign language. So here I'm using some signs to cue the words. So watch this, and then we're going to talk about something else that may be problematic that might happen to you too. It happened with this little guy, but go ahead and watch it and then see what you think, and then we'll talk about it.
Say the whole thing. Crackers, please. Good. Oh, turn around this way. Open crackers, please. Oh, this is crackers, please. Now, open crackers, please. Oh, say it with Laura. Here we go. Open. Oh, you want to see my fingernails first? Ooh, pretty. Pretty. Open crackers, please. One more time, Miles. Let's do it. Look at Laura. Look at Laura. We're going to do open crackers, please. Did Johnny do it? Let's see if Johnny can do the whole thing. Open crackers, please. That's 5 syllables. That's why it's so hard. You're going to do it? Oh, you say. Oh, crackers, please. Good.
Occasionally, using a strategy like sign language to cue the words may make it harder for some kids to do it. We've just bumped it up so much, and for sometimes I think it actually sort of interferes with motor planning for some kids because you're trying to get them to do things here and with their mouths. So watch this clip with Miles and watch how he struggled with that. And so I want you to see it so you'll know how to recognize it, and then you'll know, oh gosh, I've made it. My strategy to help him compensate has actually made it harder. So watch this so you can recognize that too.
Those crackers. What's that? Cheese. You're right. Cheese on those crackers. What are you going to say?
Please.
Good. You want to do open crackers, please? Or let's just do this one. Let's do more crackers, please.
Please.
Good. You say it. You say it. More crackers, please. Miles, let's just say it. More crackers, please.
More crackers.
Yay! You did it! I love it. Signing was making it too hard.
Okay, so it was harder for him in that clip, right? So how can we best use signs? How can we use it to make it help a kid and not hurt a kid? Well, we can use them visually, meaning that we sign the word, but that we're not necessarily saying it. We're just using it as that visual cue. And some kids then will say the word when we sign it. And you might have to back up and have that happen as a single word before you have it move to phrases. Sometimes that'll make it easier for a kid, but again, we don't want to make it harder. Sometimes I'll just mouth the word. So if I'm trying to get cracker, more crackers, please, I might just mouth as I'm signing that. And again, I'm trying to do everything I can to make it easier. When our strategies make it harder, what do you need to do? Drop the strategy. Find something else that works better for a kid. Now, another way that we can get phrases is to use what we've already learned in our course just before single words would be with verbal routine. So that would mean to kind of give a kid a running start, meaning that we are going to say a word or two just to get a kid started so that they can use their kind of fill in the blank there like we did back with verbal routine. So this would be, and let's just use a verbal routine to get this started. This would be a kid that, let's say, he's saying ready, set, go, and we just, at that point, we want him just to sequence. Even if set, go is not a real phrase, we just want to help him get those two words there together. So we might just say ready, and then have him fill in set and go. Or just the whole verbal routine. You might have a little game that you've done ready, set, go with. Let's say that you have a chasing game that you have said ready, set, go with, for months, and you've gotten a kid worked up now to this phrase level. You might just hold him and say, and give him just that little start of that word with and see if he can do the whole ready, set, go by himself. So look for that. Might be able to use you're combining kind of that verbal routine, holistic phrase there to just jump start a kid to get him going. Sometimes you can use this, if you've not used this strategy before, you can even back up and use it with single words, where you get a kid going with that. And you might even use the things that I just talked about, that we said we don't want a kid to have to say, I want whatever, or I see whatever, but you say that as the carrier phrase so that a kid can kind of fill that in. So that might have been a strategy for back in that previous course in single words, but you use it that way, and again, that fill in the blank, that close method, that running start method where you start them there, that might be something that you could use. All right, so let me give you some other tips for treating sequencing issues. And remember, we said that this happens a lot with a kid when they're not always motor planning problems, not always apraxia. Sometimes it is a cognitive issue that they just can't get that second word in there. But what would we do? Well, for those kids, we're going to practice the same single word as a sequence. And this used to be on the PLS. I don't know if it's on the PLS. I think it's up, the preschool language scale, I think it's up to PLS 5 now. Way back, I quit using the PLS back at PLS 3, and this used to be on the PLS 2 and the PLS 3, but I think they discontinued it, where we looked at using single words sequentially. And so that would be where a kid says something like, go, go, go. And that's actually a wonderful strategy for kids who have those sequencing issues. And we talked about this back with getting verbal routines going, where instead of counting as we go up or down stairs or as we push a child on the swing, we just pick a single word there and say, every time we take the next stair, up, 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 up. And we do that with, again, any kind of routine that we can think of. Maybe you're going to pick the child up and you have him start saying up when he's on the ground, and then you pick him up a little bit and have him say up again, and then you pick him up a little bit more and have him say up again. But he's just sequencing that single word. You might even do this with songs, with kids who are trying to sing a song. Instead of singing like, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. With kids with sequencing problems who can't do phrases, you might just have them sing, row, 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 row. And again, will they get that R? It might sound like oh, 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 or whoa, 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 whoa for row your boat. But again, they're sequencing. They're learning to get that same word over and over. So this is what we did with the little guy that we just saw with little Miles. And this is us using singing to try to move those phrases along with the same target word.
Where's Miles? Where?
I.
You want me to hide my eyes?
Yes.
Okay, are you going to sing the song?
Yes.
You sing it, put your hands out so you can sing. Where, oh, where? Did you say it? Say where. Where, oh, where is Laura? Where, oh, where is Laura? Sing it, Miles. Say where. Say it. Where, oh, where is Miles? Where? Oh, my eyes. Where, oh, where is Laura? Sing it one more time. Where? You sing it. Where, oh, where can Laura be? Look, I make a hole. Boo, I see you in my hole.
Now I want you to look at another little girl. We're doing the same thing here with her with using singing. And this is when we're really using singing to, again, wait for that last word and sequence last words into phrases. So watch this. Who is it? Mr. Noodle. He's Elmo's friend, Noodle.
There's Dora's friend.
There's Dora's friend. That's right. Dora and Diego are friends. Hey, can they play a game? Can they play Ring Around the Rosies? Can you make them play Rosies? Let's make them play over here. Let's play Rosies, Dora. Let's play Rosies. Ring around the rosies, pocket full of posies. Good! You did it, Julia. They did. All right, I mentioned this strategy before we started looking at those last two therapy clips, but I want to be sure that you didn't miss it. Sometimes with kids like this, we can take books that are counting books and use the same strategy. So let's say that we have a book, a counting book, and so on the first page is one puppy, and that's great. We would have a kid say puppy, and then we turn the page and we see two balls. And so instead of counting one ball, two balls for phrases, for kids who are having difficulty there, and again, from a cognitive perspective, doing plurals language-wise, that just that's unrealistic, one ball, two balls. But we could have them do what for sequencing? We could have them just say ball, ball. And then on the next page, let's say there are three babies. Instead of counting 1, 2, 3 babies, we should say what? baby, baby, baby. And so you use your little counting books in that way, and that's a great strategy. I wanted to be sure to mention that to you because that's one that's worked well for me for a long, long time. All right, so what do we do when we're using this and we've worked a kid up and we're trying to get to phrases and we've implemented these other things that we've said, and he still can't do it? What are some other things we can try? Well, I want to talk to you about backward chaining. So what's backward chaining? Backward chaining is where we have a child say the last word in the phrase, and then we go back and add the first word. So backward chaining is a neurological principle. Lots of OTs use it when they're teaching adults regaining their function, and they teach them how to do after they've had a neurological event like a stroke or a traumatic brain injury or whatever's happened, and an adult is trying to relearn something. They start at the end. And so we'll do this even, say, when we're learning a phone number. Let's say that, I say that my phone number is 859-287-8293. That's an old phone number, by the way. Don't try to call that. But you might, in your mind, you might have held on to 8293, 8293, 8293, and you're trying to learn those last four numbers because in the back of your mind, you've gotten those first ones, 859-287. You knew how to store that, but it was those last four that were going to give you difficulty. So that's the process of backward chaining. So that's what we're going to use with kids too. So if we are teaching them a phrase like more milk, we might say to them, say milk. And they say milk. Tell me milk. And they say milk again. And then you just start to model milk where it's going back and forth pretty quick, where you've gotten them to do that. And then you just throw in more milk. And then they say it. They imitate that from you. But you've got to get it going, and it's got to be pretty quickly. Speed is a factor in that. And sometimes, again, I think, gosh, that little brain just took over before that little mouth could mess it up and say that little phrase. And so this is helpful when you want to get both words. If a child, again, is repeating more, or milk, milk for that phrase, more milk, you do backward chaining first. You get them to imitate that last part, that last word, and then you go back and sneak that first word in. All right, so let's listen with backward chaining here again. I've got an example for you with Miles.
I'm so.
On Johnny. Who's that? What's his name? Johnny.
Susie.
Oh, come back over here, Miles. Look, say knee.
Knee.
Come back over here. Knee. You want to see real quick? Oh. Do you see me? Look, we're going to say Johnny's name. Say knee. You say it. Knee.
Knee.
Good. Say it again. Knee. Come on. Say it again. Knee.
Knee.
Johnny. Come on, let's say the whole thing. Ready? Come sit in my lap and do it. You sit on my knees and do it. You sit on my knees. You ready? Knee. I blow.
So.
Who is that?
So.
Oh, look. We have to say knee.
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 Johnny.
Susie.
Yes, better. Do it one more time. Knee.
Knee.
Knee. Say it. Knee. Now, Johnny.
Susie.
Better. Johnny. Okay.
Now you'll notice in that last clip it was a bisyllabic word, so 2 syllables there rather than a phrase, but the concept is the same. You get them to imitate the last word and then you add the first word and you've got that phrase. All right, when a child has moved on who still might be struggling to really get phrases, you've got him to imitate phrases and you've gotten some backward chaining going, but he's still having a difficult time. What I move to at that point is anchor phrases or anchor words. So what's going to happen then? It's going to be that you're going to practice phrases, but only one word of that phrase will change from utterance to utterance. So here what you're going to do is pick a word that a child says a lot, and just for the sake of examples, let's just pick a common word like go, and we will pair go with lots of other words so that he doesn't have to think about changing that first word. He only has to change that last word. So in this kind of situation, we might have lots of different vehicles that we're playing with in a play routine. So he has to say, go car, go truck, go plane, go boat, whatever you have come up with in your play routine to play with. It might be that you're playing with a farm set and he already knows all the names for the animals that you're using, so you're not teaching any new names. And he already knows, let's just say the word bye-bye. And so you're practicing cleaning up the farm set. What would you say? You set up an anchor phrase there, and your anchor is the word bye-bye. And so you're going to say bye-bye cow and then throw it in the bag. Bye-bye sheep, throw it in the bag. Bye-bye dog, throw it in the bag. But can you see how that's easier for a kid? Because you're not making both parts of that phrase new. You're just using one word. I like to use the word mama with this. And so we have mama do lots of different things. It might be mama up. And so mama's picking the child up. Mama down. Mama kiss. Mama tickle. And again, let me say, you can't teach new words in this situation. So you can't practice a word like tickle or kiss until the child can say that as a single word. But you get my point here. You're going to pick words a kid can already say and pair it with one of his default words. That actually becomes his anchor word. So think about how you can do that. And to do this, let me say, you've got to know your kid. You've got to know their existing vocabulary. They have to have enough words that they've said often enough that they're going to be able to repeat it in a phrase. It can't be just a brand new word. They've got to have linked meaning with it. And you've got to know that they can sequence that together. So that's, you can just see by that little explanation how hard this will be for some late talkers. So I want you to think about that and really be mindful and intentional as you are putting these word combinations together. All right, so I want us to do now what we typically do at the end of this conference when I've taught this whole system, this whole 8 levels, and even that introductory information is one long course. This is how we end the day. And I show a clip of a little guy, and we've already seen him previously. This is little Henry. I show you the clip of him and how we're working on phrases. And I just want you to see how many different strategies that we've used in there. You can think about high frequency combinations. You think about modeling with intonation. I think there's some anchor words in here. But just listen for all these strategies, because this is how real life therapy works. It's not ever that we're just doing one thing, although that's effective. When we can make ourselves really focus and just do one thing at a time and just use one primary strategy at a time, parents love that, and that's when they really own those strategies and learn those strategies. But lots of times we as therapists, we're kind of putting it all together. And so I want you to see a therapy session like that, and I want you to watch it and think about the strategies that you're hearing me use there.
Oh, ready? Should we close?
Yeah.
Close. Oh, what do we say? What do we say? Froggy!
Wow.
Where are you? Good. Should we open?
Apple.
Good. Tell Laura, open please.
Fish.
Good. Open.
Apple.
Open please. Open please. You do it. Here he goes. Here he goes. Oh, you're going to show Daddy. Can he hop? Hop, hop. That's funny. Yay. Froggy, put him in. Tell him in.
Yeah.
Good, in, Frog.
Yeah.
Good try. Oh, tell him bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Froggy.
Bye-bye.
Almost. Bye-bye, Froggy.
Bye.
Good.
Bye.
Bye, Froggy. Oh, you ready? You're going to call him? Henry. Froggy.
Bye.
Where are you?
Yeah.
Look, Frog. See? I see that, Froggy. See?
See? See?
See? Froggy? More froggies. More froggies.
Yeah.
Yeah, look. More, more.
Oh,
I want more. Ooh, look. Did you see? There's a fish.
oh,
Oh, see? What's that? Mower.
More.
Mower. More froggies, more fish. Did you see that? Yeah, look, bee.
Bee.
A bee, bumblebee. Bzzz. That's funny. You want mower? Oh, wow. What's that? Froggy. He says, yay! Want to open?
Over.
Good. Open, please.
Fire.
Where are you, Froggy? Oh, open. Yay, Froggy. Whoa, whoa. Can you make him go night-night? That's right. Pat him. Good. Pat, 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 pat. Oh, oh, you got it.
Whoa.
Whoa, Froggy. Oh, you're giving him kisses. That looks more like a wrestle than a kiss. Yeah. Are you all done, Frog? You want to tell him bye-bye?
Bye.
Bye, Froggy. Whoa, put him in. In.
And
Good. Bye, Frog.
bye.
Bye, bye, Frog. Oh, are you all done, Froggy? Henry, you want to clean up?
Ina.
Okay, let's clean up.
Yeah.
Yay! Help me clean up.
Ina.
Clean up, clean up. Everybody, everywhere. Oh, you want to zip? Will you come zip the bag? Tell Laura. Zip.
Yeah.
Good. Zip. Yay! I did it! Did you?
All right, I hoped these are some of the ones that you wrote down when you or thought about when you were watching that. Did you think about holistic phrases? Did he use some holistic phrases in that clip? He certainly did. What about expansion? Did you hear me use expansion? When he said a single word, I repeated that word and then added a word and then he repeated that word. And what about prosody? Did you hear me use the intonation changes in my voice so that I was very sing-songy and very melodic? That helped this little boy a lot. So I hope that those were the strategies that you came up with as you were watching that clip. And that's going to help you be able to use all of those strategies and really implement all of those and just be as effective as you can be with using phrases. All right, so that's the end of this course. I hope that you have learned some new strategies today and throughout all of these courses, not only for phrases but also for single words. Let me caution you too to say that a child doesn't learn how to do these things. You know, you can't just think as a therapist or as a parent working with a therapist, week 1 we're going to teach him this, week 2 we're going to teach him this, week 3. It doesn't really work that way. Kids' little brains and their little systems need time to pull all of this information together. Your starting point is going to be just one of your most critical things. So if you have not watched the first show in this series back at 422, I just want to really encourage you to go back and pick up these pieces that you may have missed. Getting your starting point for imitation is so important because when we start kids out at a level they're already beyond, what happens? They check out because they're bored. That's too easy. And again, we have to meet them where they are, but you can't stay at a level that they've already mastered too long before they just say, you know, I'm out of here, lady. You're not moving fast enough for me. So picking the starting point is super, super important. And again, if you have not done that, go back to show 422 and listen to that and get yourself a copy of this handout when you purchase the CE credit. Figure out where the kid is, get a good starting point for him, and remember it's the level where the lowest level of imitation that's just emerging. So the lowest level where he's just got 2 or 3 of those little examples of imitation there, that's where you want to meet him. And then beyond that, you can't just leave a kid at imitating. They've got to be spontaneous. So we talked about some strategies not only in this course, but in the course before this, course 428, how to make them spontaneous, how to move them to learning new words. So I hope that that's something you will explore too. All right. That is it. That is it for this 8-part podcast series. If you have made it to the end with me, or even just 3 or 4 shows and you're at the end for your child, I just want to say thank you for doing that. And again, my only goal and mission at Teach Me to Talk is helping you be the best parent or the best professional you can be and help kids learn how to understand and use language. All right, that's really it for today. I'm Laura Mize, pediatric speech language pathologist, and thanks so much for joining me for Teach Me to Talk's series, Building Verbal Imitation in Late Talkers.